For writing linear equations review, the directions say to write the linear equation in the slope-intercept form, which means y equals mx plus b, given the following. Notice for number 1, it tells you the slope equals to 2/7. Remember, slope represents the m. And your y-intercept equals to 0, which is your b. So for number 1, all you have to do is replace m with 2/7. Therefore, instead of m times x, you have 2/7 times x. And then you're replacing b with 0. Now, to fully simplify it though, you really don't need the plus 0 there because it's not going to change the value. Therefore, for number 1, your equation would just be y equals 2/7 times x. Number 2, notice how you're given the y-intercept again, and you're also given your slope. So to put it in slope-intercept form, I'm going to replace m with 1. So instead of instead of m times x, you have 1 times x. And then to that, we're adding b, which is our y-intercept of -4. Now, to simplify this, remember, whenever there's a 1 in front of the x, you really don't need the 1 there. It stays invisible. Therefore, our final answer for number 2 would be y equals x minus 4. Now, for number 3, this time you're given the graph. First thing to always do is look at your y-intercept. This is the point where your line crosses your y-axis. And that is going to give you b. Second, we have to now identify what m is. And remember, for m, you can do your rise over your run. I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then I'm counting over 1, 2, 3, 4. So for my slope, my rise was 3, my run was 4. Now, do you have to do it that way? No. Remember, if you do want to use the points, you could also look at the 2 points you're given. When x is 0, y is -2, and then when x is 4, y is 1. From here, you can do your change in y divided by your change in x, or you can do your y2 minus your y1, and then your x2 minus your x1 to still get the 3/4. Okay, now that we've identified our m and b, we're going to put them into our equation, replacing m with 3/4 and b with -2 to give us our equation in slope-intercept form. For number 4, same thing again. I'm first going to identify my y-intercept. Remember, this is a point where your line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses at 0, -1. So I've identified what b is of -1. Now I need to look for m. One thing I want you to notice is notice how your line is going down compared to number 3 where it was going up. This is a hint that your slope this time is going to be negative. We're going down 2, 1, 2, and then over 2, 1, 2. Down 2 means it's a -2 over a +2. And then when you simplify this, it gives you -1. Okay, now that we have our slope and y-intercept, we can input it into our equation of y equals mx plus b, where m we're replacing with -1, and b we're replacing with -1 as well. To fully simplify this, remember whenever you have a 1 in front of the x, you do not need it there. It stays invisible. Therefore, my final answer would be y equals negative x minus 1. Okay, for number 5. Notice this time around, you have your equation in standard form, which is your ax plus by equals c. For slope-intercept form, remember again that your goal is to get y by itself.
You need to go.
So here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 2x over to the right. So in here, 2x minus 2x, well, that becomes 0. You're left with 5y on the left, and then this equals to 35 minus 2x on the right. From here, now all we do is divide by 5 because we want to get that y by itself. 5 divided by 5, well, that just gives you 1. That stays invisible. Y is now by itself. From here, you take negative 2 divided by 5. That gives you negative 2/5 of x. And then you're also dividing 35 by 5, giving you positive 7. Now, my equation would be y equals negative 2/5 of x plus 7. Number 6, notice this is still in standard form, and again, our goal is to get y by itself. So from here, again, first thing I'm going to do is move the 2x to the right-hand side. If it's positive 2x, the opposite is subtracting 2x. And again, what you do to one side, you do to the other. This leaves you with negative y equals to 4 minus 2x. Now, that negative, we also have to get rid of it. Remember, when the variable is by itself, it represents 1. So here we have negative 1, and we're multiplying it times y. Therefore, to get rid of it, we're going to divide, because you always do the opposite. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. Negative 1 divided by negative 1, that leaves y by itself. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 gives me a positive 2x. And then positive 4 divided by negative 1 gives me minus 4. Now I have my equation of y equals 2x minus 4. Number 7. You have x minus 6y equals to 30. Remember, for slope-intercept form, y needs to be by itself. Therefore, same thing again. I'm going to move the x to the other side. It's positive x, therefore the opposite is to subtract x. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. Therefore, I'm left with negative 6y is equal to 30 minus x. Y is not by itself yet. We're multiplying it times negative 6. The opposite would be to divide by negative 6. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. Negative 6 divided by negative 6, that gives you 1. Y is by itself. Then on the right-hand side, remember, when the variable is by itself, that's basically saying 1. Negative 1 divided by negative 6 gives you a positive 1/6 of x. And then 30 divided by negative 6 gives you negative 5. Therefore, your equation for number 7 would be y equals 1/6 of x minus 5. Number 8, still in standard form, we want y by itself. Same thing again. I'm going to move 5x to the right-hand side by doing the opposite. Positive 5, opposite is negative 5. What you do to one side, you do to the other. This leaves you with negative 4 times y equal to negative 12 minus 5x. From here, y is not by itself yet. It's being multiplied times negative 4. The opposite is to divide. And again, what you do to one side, you do to the other. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to give you 1. Y is by itself. Negative 5 divided by negative 4 is going to give you positive 5/4 of x. And then negative 12 divided by negative 4 gives you positive 3. Now giving me my answer of y equals 5/4 of x plus 3 for my equation. Okay, for the last part, notice how now you're being given a point and the slope. This is now where we use the point-slope form. And your point-slope form is y minus y1 is equal to m times the difference of x minus x1. x1 is negative 2 for this one, y1 is negative 3, and m is 5/2. Therefore, I'm just going to replace y1 with negative 3. I'm going to replace m with 5/2. And I'm going to replace x1 with negative 2. Now, before I distribute and isolate, I'm going to have to simplify because notice you have that double negative. And a double negative turns it into a positive. On the right-hand side, same thing. Double negative turns it into a positive. Okay, next, we're going to distribute using our rainbow. 5/2 times x just gives you 5/2 of x. And then 5/2 times 2 gives you positive 5. On the left-hand side, you still have y plus 3. Remember, for slope-intercept form, it wants y by itself. Therefore, I need to get rid of this plus 3 that I'm adding to y. And the opposite of adding 3 is going to be to subtract 3. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. 3 minus 3 gives me 0. Y is by itself. Now we have y equals to 5/2 of x. And then 5 minus 3 leaves me with 2. Number 10, same thing again. Using our point-slope form of y minus y1 is equal to m times the difference of x minus x1. So we're going to replace y1 with negative 4. We're going to replace m with negative 3. And we're going to replace x1 with 2. From here, notice you have a double negative. Let's go ahead and simplify that and turn it into a positive. Now giving me y plus 4. From here, you're going to distribute using rainbow. Negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. And then negative 3 times negative 2 gives me positive 6. Notice y is not by itself yet because we're adding 4. And to get rid of it, we do the inverse, the opposite, and subtract 4. And don't forget, what you do to one side, you do to the other. This leaves me with y equals to negative 3x plus 2 because we're subtracting 6 minus 4. For number 11, Still using our point slope form of y minus y1 is equal to m times the difference of x minus x1. Now, before we do that though, notice this time that they did not give you the slope. So this is where we have an additional step that we have to do before we use our point slope form. And that is we first have to find what our slope is. And to do that, we're going to use our y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So y2 is negative 4, y1 is positive 2, x2 is 4, and we're subtracting x1, which is 0. Negative 4 minus 2 gives me negative 6. 4 minus 0 leaves me with 4. And when you simplify this, you're going to get negative 3/2. So this gives me my slope. Now that I know what my slope is, I can replace m with what we just generated of negative 3/2. And then I'll go ahead and use my first ordered pair. x1 is 0 and y1 is positive 2. We don't have any double negatives, so now we can go on to using rainbow. Negative 3/2 times x, and then you have negative 3/2 times 0, which just makes it 0. And we really don't need it there. Now, on the left-hand side, you still have y minus 2. Remember, the goal is to get y by itself for slope-intercept form. Therefore, I'm going to have to get rid of the minus 2 by doing the opposite and adding 2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. Minus 2 plus 2 gives me 0. Y is by itself, and then I have negative 3/2 times x plus 2 to finish off my equation. Okay, same thing for number 12. You're given those two ordered pairs, so we first have to identify our slope. And one way of identifying it is using y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Remember, when numbering your ordered pairs, they have to have the same number. 1 with 1 and 2 with 2. Okay, so here y2 is negative 3, and I'm going to subtract y1, which is negative 4. x2 is negative 3, and I'm going to subtract x1, which is negative 2. Notice you're given a double negative. Remember, double negative turns it to positive. So here I have negative 3 plus 4, giving me a positive 1. And then on the bottom, same thing. You have that double negative, turning it to a positive. Negative 3 plus 2 gives you a negative 1. So when you simplify this, 1 divided by negative 1 is just going to give you negative 1 as your slope. Now we can plug it into our point slope form, where we have y minus y1 is equal to m times the difference of x minus x1. I'm going to use that first ordered pair still. y1 is negative 4. We just identified that m is negative 1. And x1 is negative 2. Notice we have double negatives. So we're going to go ahead and simplify it. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. Same thing over here. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. We've simplified. Now we can distribute using rainbow. -1 times x, that just gives you -1x. -1 times +2 gives me -2. And on the left-hand side, you still have +4. So how do we get rid of the +4 if we're adding? We're going to subtract 4. And don't forget, what you do to one side, you do to the other. +4 minus 4, that becomes 0. You're left with y on the left-hand side, -1x. Remember, when it's just 1, you don't need the 1 there. It stays invisible. So you have -x, and then -2 minus 4 gives you -6, giving us our equation of y equals -x minus 6.